Welcome to the White Knight Theater. The only thing the police had to do was to put these people in jail, especially those niggers. After the incident with the Fifth Amendment and the glove, we can't afford any more mistakes. From a crime to the jury's verdict, the prosecution and defense have been locked in a prolonged battle over whether Simpson is guilty for over a year and 4 months. To try this case, the Los Angeles local government has spent $19 million, with court testimonies reaching 50,000 pages, 133 witnesses appearing in court, and 1,105 pieces of evidence presented. Over 1,000 journalists have covered this case. The trial of the century is about to come to an end. This episode will recreate the closing arguments, more thrilling than any drama, with all statements coming from the real scenes of the case. According to internal sources from the LAPD, several detectives involved in the Simpson investigation have been suspended, awaiting internal investigation. The Los Angeles District Attorney is preparing to prosecute Detective Furman. There are reports that the DA plans to officially file charges against Furman after the Simpson verdict, as he may face up to 3 years in prison for this offense. Previously, Furman had participated in the O.J. Simpson investigation and discovered key evidence. The Furman tapes have once again tarnished the reputation of the LAPD and plunged the prosecution team, led by Marcia Clark, into a crisis of losing the case. Since the prosecution had already presented all their evidence and completed the burden of proof, with the key glove evidence now losing its persuasiveness, the prosecutors have no other options left. The trial of the O.J. Simpson case is slipping into its conclusion amid a series of news reports. Detective Vaniter, who was in charge of investigating the O.J. Simpson case, was summoned to court again today. During the trial, Detective Vaniter admitted to the defense attorney that on the morning of June 13th, after obtaining O.J. Simpson's blood sample, he did not follow the standard procedure to register the blood as evidence. Instead, he kept the vial of blood in his pocket for over 3 hours before handing it over to criminalist Dennis Fung, who was collecting evidence at the Simpson crime scene. Breaking news. The defense team for O.J. Simpson has just announced that O.J. will not testify on his own behalf. In the latest update on the Simpson case, during the trial on September 22nd, O.J. Simpson made a formal statement to Judge Lance Ito, waiving his right to testify. He also made the following defense statement: "I did not commit this crime." Meanwhile, the subsequent impacts of 2 dramatic events continue. O.J. Simpson tried on the glove in court, and the jury, along with 50 million TV viewers, witnessed that the glove did not fit. This caused the key glove evidence to lose its persuasiveness and led the prosecution to lose all the advantages they had accumulated. The exposure of Furman's racist tapes and his invocation of the Fifth Amendment upon returning to court completely undermined the prosecution's strategy. Whether O.J. Simpson is guilty or not, the answer can only be determined by the jury. On September 26, 1995, after more than 10 months of trial, the Simpson case finally reached the closing argument stage. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's almost over. I want to thank you for your time and effort, and for your pursuit of justice and the truth. First, I want to talk about Mark Furman. Mark Furman is a racist. Yes, we wish the LAPD didn't have people like him. Yes, we wish there were no such people in the world. But Mark Furman's racist remarks and actions, and his lies on the witness stand, do not mean that the defendant, O.J. Simpson, did not commit this terrible crime. He did not murder 2 innocent people. In this long trial, you have seen a vast amount of evidence and heard the answers from hundreds of witnesses. However, some of it does not help answer the most important and crucial question: who murdered Nicole and Goldman? The defense has tried to lead you down a wrong path. I hope you can distinguish the distractions, forget all the showy parts, and focus on the evidence that the defense cannot refute. Those are the ones that truly help answer who the murderer is. Finally, I want to emphasize one small thing. When the defendant learned of his wife's death, he did not ask how she died. Think about it. He did not ask how she died. Ask yourselves why. In the closing arguments, prosecutors Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden spoke successively, trying to seize this last brief moment to persuade the jurors to conclude that Simpson was the murderer. Let's go back to the beginning of this case and understand the defendant's marriage to Nicole. For Nicole, the defendant was a ticking time bomb, ignited as early as 1985, the year they got married. A police officer once received a report that Nicole claimed the defendant had beaten her and smashed his Mercedes with a baseball bat. Later, in 1989, Nicole called 911 twice out of fear for her life. When the officers arrived, Nicole ran towards them, shouting, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me." At that moment, Nicole had a black eye, a swollen cheek, a bleeding forehead wound, and torn clothes. She emphasized to the officers that they had come 8 times, but had never taken any action against him. In February 1992, Nicole filed for divorce to save herself from the man who threatened to kill her. But Nicole also foresaw future dangers. Otherwise, why would she put her will and photos of past domestic violence into a bank safe deposit box? She understood that even if she bravely chose divorce, the bomb hanging over her head still exploded on the afternoon of June 12, 1994. As Nicole watched her daughters dance, the defendant sat in the last row, staring at Nicole with a look of contempt and rage. That night, the defendant drove on the road, speeding but unable to vent the long-accumulated anger. He lost Nicole, and the fuse burned shorter and shorter. The defendant forgot about the children at home and drove to find Nicole, channeling his anger into a knife. He thrust the knife into Nicole, repeating the action, releasing a bit of his anger with each thrust, until he calmed down and until Nicole and Goldman lost their lives. Over the past year, people have been telling you that this is a conspiracy, that the police are targeting Mr. Simpson because he is black. But we all know that this case has nothing to do with the N-word. It is only about O.J. Simpson and the murders he committed. All the evidence points to him. He is a murderer, even if he was once the top football player. However, the brilliant speeches of prosecutors Clark and Darden were ultimately overshadowed by the last speaker, Johnny Cochran. When Johnny stood up with his calm and confident smile, facing the jury and the live cameras, all the viewers' attention was captured by him. First, I want to emphasize that domestic violence is absolutely intolerable and unforgivable. Mr. Simpson is not proud of some things he did during his marriage, but does that mean he is a murderer? Of course, Mr. Darden just talked about 1985, but he deliberately omitted the key point. What exactly happened in 1985? Mark Furman responded to the call in Rockingham, where he saw a young white girl married to a powerful black man. He despised it because he was a bona fide racist. Mark Furman once said, "If I see an interracial couple on the road, I will pull them over. If there's no valid reason, I'll just make one up. When a racist has power, he can do whatever he wants to you, even if he is just an ordinary policeman or just a patrol officer. Our legal system has turned him into absolute authority, even holding your life in his hands." So, years later, Mark Furman defied the court, lying and perjuring himself on the witness stand, packaging himself as an upright and selfless person. Even earlier, he deliberately ignored his superior's orders and revisited Rockingham. Without any permission or valid reason, he climbed over the fence and entered Mr. Simpson's private property. He took a walk in someone else's house and claimed to have found a bloodied glove. But were these just Mark Furman's individual actions? Don't be deceived. Mark Furman represents the entire LAPD. This is a free country, and everyone has the right to know the truth. Everyone deserves fair treatment, regardless of whether they are white or black. Your decisions over the next few days could have a profound and lasting impact on this country. Listen to the voice within you. Perhaps your background, your character, and your everyday experiences have already pointed to an answer. The voice is shouting that we will not tolerate injustice. O.J. Simpson should be acquitted. If you do not act, who will? Can you expect the police to deliver justice for you? Can you expect these absurdities to end on their own? Over the past year, the prosecutors have entrusted this case to a man who claimed he wanted all niggers to be rounded up and killed. This is genocide. The last person to say this was Adolf Hitler. Men are not to be trusted, and neither are the prosecutors. Finally, let's return to the most crucial moment in this trial, when the prosecutor asked O.J. Simpson to put on the glove, and it did not fit. It did not fit because the glove did not belong. If you do not stop them from covering up the truth, who will? Ladies and gentlemen, remember this. If the glove does not fit, you must acquit him. If the glove does not fit, you must acquit him. My glove does not fit. You must acquit OJ. My glove does not fit. You must acquit OG. My glove does not fit. You must acquit OJ. If the glove does not fit, you must acquit OC. My glove does not fit. You must acquit him. If the glove does not fit, you must acquit him. In July, after the prosecution completed their case, Dr. Lee and Sam's involvement in the Simpson case temporarily came to an end. They returned to their laboratory in Connecticut, where they were busy and did not have the leisure to return to Los Angeles to watch the trial. However, they followed all the developments in the Simpson case remotely, without missing a single session. As the case neared its conclusion and both sides completed their closing arguments, Sam couldn't help but discuss the verdict with Dr. Lee. Do you think the jury will ultimately find OG not guilty? The American justice system emphasizes procedural justice, and a conviction requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Under this standard, OJ is likely to be acquitted due to the prosecution's questionable evidence. In the American judicial system, the standard for conviction in criminal cases is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This legal term encompasses an important principle. In criminal cases, which involve life and liberty, the jury does not necessarily have to be convinced of the defendant's complete innocence to acquit. As long as the prosecution's evidence presented in court is insufficient, or the evidence chain has multiple flaws or doubts, failing to meet the standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, the jury can still acquit the defendant. So, personally, do you think OG is guilty or not guilty? Sam, you tried to set a trap for me. We've been involved in this case from beginning to end, visited the crime scene, and personally handled all the physical and blood evidence. We might be the people in the world who know the truth most clearly. So, my conclusion is from the perspective of forensic science. Based on the evidence in two directions, we can draw two conclusions. The first conclusion is based on the evidence found by the police at the crime scene. This part of the evidence, due to improper collection and handling, fails to provide a decisive conclusion that OJ is the murderer. Moreover, the presence of EDTA in the blood samples and the disappearance of 1.5 milliliters of OJ's blood sample, among other doubts, make this part of the evidence even less convincing. What about the second conclusion? The second conclusion is based on the evidence that the police investigation neglected, including the blood droplets falling vertically on Nicole's back and the second unfamiliar shoe print found at Bundy Drive. These key pieces of evidence could have locked down the real culprit shortly after the crime, but they were ignored, ultimately missing the chance to uncover the truth. For the victims' families, this will be the greatest regret. Do we still have a chance to make amends?